Let me talk a bit about A Complete Unknown. As usual, when Oscar season rolls around, I lament how few nominated films I've seen. It's not always my fault, mind you. Some films just take their time getting to Japan, and those award nominations are a ticket for more artistic fare that might not have a wide appeal to get a spot on Japanese screens. A Complete Unknown, released in 2024, directed by James Mangold, and starring Timothee Chalamet as Bob Dylan, was one of those films. So I finally got a chance to see it. When I was growing up, Bob Dylan was still young, relatively speaking, but his presence and impact on music was already waning. My only real impression of him was his solo part in We Are the World, and I honestly didn't know who he was when he sang his bit during that song. What stood out to me was that his voice was unique. Later on, I learned the names of all of the participants, and of course, I recognized Bob Dylan at that point. But I couldn't name any of his works and knew almost nothing about him except his name. Teenage tastes in the 80s, I suppose. I grew up in a very small town, 1,200 people, and Dylan's music wasn't played on any of the 3 AM radio stations we could reliably get, 2 being top 10 rock pop and 1 being country. Going into A Complete Unknown, Bob Dylan wasn't much more than that to me, an almost complete unknown. I knew he had an impact, I knew he was a formidable writer, but I didn't know his music. Or so I thought. Now, for the movie. First off, this film doesn't have an agenda. It doesn't pick out any big cause that Bob Dylan supported or comment on the social issues of the day. It just tells Dylan's story during the earliest years of his career. It starts in 1961 with him befriending Pete Seeger, meeting the New York folk music community, and subsequently recording his first album, mainly covers of traditional folk songs. It ends when he went electric at the Newport Folk Music Festival in 1965. Barely 4 years. But they were the years that put him on the map, the years that established him as an icon, the years during which he won over a community and then, if you believe some, abandoned that same community. The main theme of this film, to me, has 2 facets. Number 1, there are always gatekeepers. There are people who want to define things and reject anything that goes against those definitions. The only thing such people usually have supporting them is that they were first. These people are afraid of change and want their fingers on the new so that they can control what impact it has on the old. People in this film discuss whether an artist is country or rock, insist what the parameters of folk music are, and worry over their own loss of status as the world around them changes. It is proclaimed that folk music is one man, or woman, Pete adds, but it seems mostly a male genre. Joan Baez was the gorgeous face of young folk before Dylan came along as a potential draw for younger listeners. One man on a stage playing a guitar and maybe a harmonica and singing songs that speak to the people about how the world should be. That was all folk music can be to those gatekeepers. They seem to come from a time before every house had a record player and current music could be enjoyed by anyone in their living rooms, a time before people listened to the radio as they drove around in their cars, a time before television put faces to the voices. They came from a tradition in which the only way to hear music was to have someone play it in front of you live and in person. There is an appeal to this immediacy for sure, but music was being consumed in different ways, and some of those ways lent themselves to amplified instruments. There was also a global influence, with sounds from other parts of the world entering the zeitgeist. These gatekeepers were operating more out of fear than purity, fear of being left behind. The other facet is that artists don't want to be put in boxes. They don't want limitations imposed on them by others. They don't want to be categorized and labeled and criticized for trying something new. All through the film, Dylan is chafing against the restraints others try to shackle him with, be it as a musician or a lover or an icon. He is unwelcoming to such attention from the folk music community, from the women in his life, and from his fans. He seems to like the fame and money, but not the adulation and possible obligations that come with it. Gatekeepers and boxes. Those are the themes. I had previously seen Wonka, so I knew that Timothee Chalamet could sing, but his transformation into Bob Dylan is remarkable. The body language, the voice, both speaking and singing, the playing of guitar and harmonica, all perfection. His performance alone is worth watching the film for. Monica Barbaro, who plays Joan Baez, is equally outstanding. The biggest surprise for me, however, was Edward Norton. He played Pete Seeger. I had no idea he could sing, and playing the banjo is no easy thing. Across the board, this film is a showcase of outstanding acting. Couple that with the set design and costuming, which really brings back that era. This film is like a time machine whisking viewers away to 1960s America. At no time was I ever distracted or pulled out of the story. Authentic is the best word for it. As I watched the film, I realized that I did know Dylan's music, so much of it. So many of his works had been covered by other artists, and so much of his wordsmithing has been echoed by those who came after him. This film made me understand Dylan more completely, and it strangely made me understand Chalamet more deeply as well. One of the best things about YouTube is that it serves as an archive of so much history. When I came home after watching A Complete Unknown, I found myself seeking out the actual film recordings of some performances reenacted in the movie, especially the pivotal, electric ones at Newport in 1965. I sought out interviews from that era to hear Dylan speak, duets with Joan Baez to see the affection in her eyes as they sang together, interviews with Baez and Seeger where they comment, sometimes negatively, on Dylan. Any film that lingers in such a way that makes you want to explore the topic afterwards is top-notch in my book. I didn't explore Dylan before. I should have. But it's never too late. It's all out there on YouTube and elsewhere, and he is still performing on what is being called the Never-Ending Tour. And yes, there are videos from that tour on YouTube as well, from as recent as 2024, which is when A Complete Unknown came out. He is 83 years old as I make this video, still uncompromising, still performing, still influencing musicians and writers. If you haven't seen A Complete Unknown, check it out. If you already love Dylan, this film will satisfy you. If you don't know much about him, this film will make you hungry to learn more. If you have any comments about Dylan or about the movie or about his music, I'd love to read them, so please feel free to leave them in the comments section. Thank you for watching. See you next time.